Okay, vegan weight loss do's and don'ts today. I've got 2 do's for you and 2 don'ts for you. It's one of those kind of days where I'm feeling, a little bit alternative, a little bit indie. So we're actually going to start with the don'ts here to be unconventional. And your first don't is don't dismiss a whole macronutrient group, with your macronutrients being carbohydrates, fat, and protein. I think in early vegan YouTube, you saw this real caution about use of overt fats, or in other words, fat-rich plant foods, avocados, nuts, seeds, nut butter, tahini, so on and so forth. Oil, though I would largely agree that oil should be avoided. But even those whole food sources of fat, you would hear people talking about the importance of omitting those. Nowadays, the polarity here is quite startling. On Instagram versus YouTube, on Instagram, you've got a lot of people, including the sort of new vegan gym bros that have come out the woodwork in the last few years, many of whom I like, just for the record. You have now sort of counterculture anti-diet, quote unquote, or self-labeled anti-diet movements that are all saying, no, all those vegan YouTubers that told you to, omit those fat-rich plant foods, they're all wrong, that's really restrictive. So where do I stand on this? Because it's confusing, right? There's all these different voices. You've probably been torn on this stuff in the past. All 3 macronutrients are important. So my first piece of advice, and the first don't here, as I say, is don't just dismiss a whole group. Whether it's fat, protein, or carbohydrate, don't just get rid of a whole group. You need 3, right? You need all 3, rather. They all play an essential role in the body and a different role in the body. Now, it's not as though you need all 3 in the same amount, but you do need all 3, and that's the first point. How should that break down? How should that look? Well, what I have my clients do and what's changed my life so much is high carbohydrate, moderate protein, and low fat. And the thing I want to stress here most of all is that final point, the low fat. When I say low fat, I do not mean as low as 10% of calories from fat, as was popularized by the 80-10-10, or more of a starch solution philosophy, if you're familiar with those things. I actually think it still ought to be a low-fat diet, but maybe around 15 or starting at 15% of one's calories coming from fat. So anyway, to get back to our point here, because we've digressed slightly, the first don't here, do not dismiss a whole macro group. It will be to your detriment. There is this really sort of binary thinking, oh, it's the carbs, like with the keto dieters. Oh, it's the carbs that have to go. Oh, it's the protein that has to go. Oh, it's the fat that has to be kept low, as in the days of the early vegan YouTubers. I don't agree whatsoever. You need all 3, but of course to the right amounts. Don't number 2 here then, I don't know why I put one finger up, don't number 2 here is do not underestimate the role of exercise because you've been told it's all about nutrition. It isn't all about nutrition. It's largely about nutrition. I know that sounds like a very subtle difference, but it's a really important distinction. There is a big difference between it's all about the nutrition, suggesting the only thing that matters for weight loss is food, and then saying it's largely about the food. And I think a lot in the vegan plant-based community, you do hear this focus on food. It's all about the nutrition. It's all about the nutrition. And then, adversely, in the mainstream health and weight loss world, you'll hear people say, no, it's 50% food and 50% exercise. Again, for the record, I think those guys are wrong too. They're vastly overestimating the role of exercise. The bottom line on this is, look, what's going to work for weight loss is you being in a sensible calorie deficit. You can achieve a sensible calorie deficit with food changes alone. You can be in a calorie deficit without exercise. It is literally possible to lose weight doing 0 exercise, maybe just a little bit of pottering around your house. 0 exercise and you can lose weight. That's true. But at the same time, my argument for use of exercise as a tool for weight loss, but also general health and well-being and feeling good in life, is that it makes it easier to be in a calorie deficit if you're doing a bit of exercise. So yeah, you don't have to, but I think it makes it easier. And that's why I don't believe that it's all about the nutrition. I think the distinction is that it's largely about the nutrition. So please don't underestimate the role of exercise when it comes to actually losing weight. The first do here then, do focus predominantly on whole foods. This is not something I need to beat the drum on for too long here. You're familiar with my channel. You've heard others say this before. It's not rocket science. It's not profound. This isn't to say that all processed foods are automatically bad. bad or automatically terrible for weight loss. It's not that straightforward. What about whole wheat pasta or, cereal like bran flakes? These are technically processed foods. Whole grain breads. These are technically processed foods, but they're fiber rich, still have a relatively low caloric density. They're wonderful for both health and weight loss efforts as well. Are they bad just because they're processed? No, of course not. It's not quite that simplistic. But I think as a general rule, it's definitely best to make a conscious effort to fit as many whole foods onto your plate as you possibly can. They're going to have, as I say, high fiber content, low caloric density, and be packed with nutrients that leave you feeling nourished, fueled, well satisfied. And again, this is just, I'm talking about satiety here, but also, in terms of more widely health and well-being, what a nutrient-rich diet this diet actually is when you eat lots of whole foods. If you're eating all the vegan junk, then maybe you're not, reaping the rewards from that. Do number 2 here, to finish, is ensure that your caloric intake is neither too low nor too high. If you want to lose weight, sadly, you need to be in a calorie deficit. People don't like hearing this. People want to just hear that they can eat fairly cleanly and they'll lose weight. Sadly, there is a difference between eating for health and eating for weight loss. Weight loss, sadly, is a very intentional process, and that intentionality is often going to be required when it comes to thinking about caloric amounts. This doesn't mean you need to track and measure all your portions. You know this if you've been following me for a long time. My clients don't do this. I didn't count calories when I lost weight as a vegan, so I don't think you need to do this, but it is worth being conscious of the importance of a calorie deficit and thinking quite consciously, again, not to overuse that word now, about, how many calories are going into the bowls, the plates of food you're making. If you're having loads of nut butter every day and you're not losing weight, it's worth understanding that nut butter is quite calorically rich, and that might be where or one of the reasons you're going wrong. So yeah, ensure your calorie intake isn't too high so that you can actually lose weight. Adversely, on the flip side, ensure it's not too low, because then you're running, whether knowingly or not, a very aggressive calorie deficit. It can lead to that inevitable sort of crash and burn. It's very unsustainable. It's an unsafe and an unhealthy way to lose weight. You'll compromise metabolic efficiency, hormone function, and it'll let go of other important things in the body. You hear all of these testimonials and stories. I've heard it from, clients, not on my program, but clients coming to my program. They've reported this, when they've experienced, or when they've tried aggressive things like maybe juice fasting in the past, where they start to lose hair and their nails start to become really, really brittle. These are all telltale signs. It's not that it's just down to caloric intake, but these are all perhaps telltale signs that you might be eating way too few calories. And that's always a greater risk when you follow a very whole foods focused diet. It is possible, yes, to overeat on a plant-based diet, but it also is possible, maybe not as possible, to undereat on a plant-based diet. So ensure that your calorie intake is there in the right place for your goals. They're your 2 do's and don'ts, 4 in total. Hopefully this helps you out. See you in the next one.